evening. Welcome to Front Page Close-Up. Our guest today is Robert Spencer, a leading and world-renowned scholar of Islam. He is the author of 10 books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Truth About Muhammad, and his latest, co-authored with Pamela Geller, The Post-American Presidency, the Obama Administration's War on America. Robert, if readers only have enough money to buy one book, which one would it be?
Well, it depends on what you want. They're so different. You got two people who are actually very similar in a lot of ways,
Okay.
Muhammad and Obama. And so it really depends on...
Okay, we'll get into it. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Jamie.
Okay, Robert, I want to get you ready because Front Page Close-Up is into the difficult questions, hard questions. We don't let any guest off easy.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, first of all, Robert, I've been doing a lot of reading of your books, and I see that you only present what's wrong with Islam, what's bad about Islam, the negative about Islam. Let's begin by you saying perhaps something positive about it or something that's good about Islam.
Something that's good about Islam. Well, I'll tell you, if the Quran had not been a fascinating book for me to read, when I first read it in about 1980 or 81, I would not have embarked upon this study. And I've always found the surahs toward the end of the book, that is, the early ones chronologically, to be very arresting and vivid and poetic in their imagery and fascinating in that way. Certainly a very dark vision of death and judgment and so on, but nonetheless one that I always thought was very fascinating and always continued to read the Quran because of that.
But the problem is that the other surahs and verses, they abnegate, they throw away the earlier verses.
Quite so, yeah. Well, in a certain sense, yes. It's a little more complicated than that, but yeah, generally Islamic theologians will say that the chronologically later passages of the Quran, if there is a contradiction with something that's earlier, then the later things take precedence. And the problem for us in that is that the violent verses come later.
Come later, and that's in some way the final word on
Yes.
jihad and etc. Robert, let's start with this first section of Front Page Close-Ups this evening to talk a little bit about what I think that it could be argued, as I said, that this negative part of Islam, what we see in the media, I think that a lot of what we see in the media doesn't really tell us some things about the Islamic world. For instance, for young people that are watching today, tell us, for instance, about what's happening in the Islamic world, maybe some fun nightclubs, some good entertainment districts. Tell us a little bit about, for the young people in the West, the picture that they're missing about the good nightclub life, perhaps in the Islamic world, like in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan.
Well, Jamie, there is nightclub life in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. I'm not really able to go to those countries anymore, but I can tell you that there is certainly a vibrant nightlife if you know where to go. There's certainly a certain kind of discretion that you have to exercise in some areas, but there's, in a lot of places, there are still very westernized areas in which, you could be in any Western city.
Okay, but just a second. So if people are going to Vegas to party in Vegas or to gamble in Vegas, is there a Vegas of the Islamic world?
Well, yeah, you would say Qatar or Dubai, places that the Saudis go when they're on vacation.
But wait a minute, how about where there is an
Europe.
Islamic State set up? Does it exist at all there? Is there fun for young people there at all?
Well, if there is, but it's more underground.
It has to be underground,
Yeah.
and then therefore it would be...
But in the Islamic Republic of Iran, quite recently there have been crackdowns on young people because they're affecting Western dress and they're dancing and listening to the wrong kind of music.
Okay, now speaking about music, in the West we hear about the divas and pop stars, Mariah Carey, Rihanna, Beyonce. Is the media blocking us from knowing something about Islamic female pop stars and divas that maybe young people would want to know about?
Well, there are some. They do exist.
But they're not officially recognized?
Well, it depends on where you are. I mean, if you're talking about Lebanon, then there's certainly pop stars like Fairuz. I mean, of course, she's a little older, but of course, I'm a little older. I don't know the younger
Okay.
ones.
How about in the West and in the States, the NFL, NBA, young people go on about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. How about the great
Soccer.
sports in the Islamic world?
Soccer. Pakistani soccer team.
How about is there like an NFL or NBA or
Well,
something?
soccer is, I don't quite know how it works because not really a big soccer fan, but I know there's some sort of big international competition, and Muslim countries participate in that.
Okay, how about great stand-up
And yeah, there
comedian?
are local teams too, you know, Saudi soccer teams within
But
Saudi
is it
Arabia,
as
and they play.
exciting as the NBA and NFL?
Well, I guess it's all a matter of taste, you know.
But how come we're not watching it from the West?
Well, you know, that's a big question, Jamie. That's a complicated question. I mean, Western pop culture really is sort of international in a way that no other pop culture is, but there are other popular cultures around
Okay,
the
how
world.
about female sports stars? Like, you know, we have Serena Williams,
Yeah, Mia
Navratilova, Anna Kournikova. What are some female sports athlete stars
Female
in the Islamic
sports
world?
stars. Now,
How come
now
we
you're
never
this is
hear
getting
about
tougher now. Yeah, you know, this is your
Stand-up comedians. Here we have Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle. We've got, you know, Richard Pryor in the past. What are
Yes.
some of their great stand-up comedians?
There are
in the-
stand-up comedians. There's Muslim stand-up comedians in the West.
But how about in the Islamic world?
Yeah, there are, but a lot of them are like preachers. And what they're doing is they're trying to present the Islamic message in a way that's accessible
But
to youth.
can they make
you know?
fun of their own culture and of
Oh,
clerics?
no,
And
no.
what if they make fun of?
They make fun of us. They make fun of the
But
West.
can they do self-criticism?
You know, it's just like that old joke that Ronald Reagan told about the Soviet Union. That he said to a Soviet guy, Russian guy,
Trust
in
but
my
verify?
country in my country I can go right to the White House and tell the president that he's all wrong.
Right.
And the guy in the Soviet Union said, "Oh well, sure, I can do that too. I can go right to the Kremlin and tell them that the president of the United States is all wrong."
Okay, so in terms of comedy, in terms of self-criticism, it's not too widespread.
Self-criticism is a big problem. In all these years that I have been out on the polemical cutting edge and trying to raise awareness about jihad and Islam, I have never come across even one Muslim who was willing to say, Muslims have done wrong in history and the Islamic world needs to reform and so on and so on.
Okay,
there is no self-criticism.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that. Maybe there's no self-criticism because they're so busy inventing things now. There might be a little bit of a shortage in terms of what I've just discussed, but tell us about the great inventions, science and all that stuff, the last couple hundred years coming out of the Islamic world.
That's all history, you know. They're supposed to have invented everything in the world that we've got today. But even if they did, I mean, there's a whole lot of nonsense being retailed about that lately. But it's all 1,000 years ago.
Did they help with the notion of privacy and individual freedom, democracy?
Privacy, individual freedom, democracy, those are Western notions developed in a Western
Well, what's
context.
a great notion or a great invention, like the light bulb or something? Do you know anything coming?
Algebra.
So they had something to do with algebra?
Yeah, well, you know, that's the word itself is an Arabic word. And it comes
Okay, 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, obviously per capita, an incredible amount of Nobel Prizes.
No.
Books, bestsellers,
A handful.
contributions to literature.
There was one guy, one Muslim, one Christian Arab, the very few Nobel Prize winners.
Wow, okay, just a sec, but why in this great tradition and such a huge population in this religion are they not contributing to literature or to scholarship?
Well, you know, there's an old story that the Caliph Umar is supposed to have said when he burned down the Library of Alexandria. They said, "What are you doing burning down the library?" And he said, "Well, if the books in it agree with the Quran, then they're superfluous, and if they disagree with the Quran, then they're heretical. And so either way, we don't need them." And so there's kind of an anti-intellectual tradition in the Islamic world that stymies this development. Also, the Quran itself, with its idea of God as absolute will, it kind of militates against the idea that he might be consistent in his ordering of the universe. He doesn't have to be, because that would be limiting his absolute sovereignty.
Okay, how about great investigative reporting in the Islamic world? Bernstein, Woodward took down Nixon. Tell us about, in the Islamic world, maybe great investigative reporters on the street exposing clerical abuse, muftis.
You don't have free
imams.
societies. You don't have a free
But are there
society or
some
a free
great
press.
investigative reporters that are looking into honor killings and stuff like that?
Not in the Islamic world. In the Islamic world, you know, Jordan and Syria and other countries, they have relaxed penalties for honor killing. It's broadly
So
tolerated.
there's no great investigative
It's not some
reporting.
kind of a crusade, so to speak, against it.
Okay, in the West, in America, we have dissidents who stand up against the quote-unquote society, culture, establishment, people like Noam Chomsky, who receive tremendous material and cultural rewards for being dissidents in in their society. Name us the dissidents in the Islamic world who receive cultural and material rewards for standing up against Islamic
Cultural and
theology.
material rewards? No. There are dissidents. You know, the apostate of Damascus, he's called, Sadiq al-Azam, and other people like that. Said, what's his name? Said ad-Din Ibrahim.
But they have to watch out for their life?
Yeah, and so it's not really the same kind of thing at all. These guys are in and out of jail. They have all sorts of trouble. You know, Taslim al-Nasreen in Pakistan. Terrible persecution, not any kind of accolades.
Now, we know that Muhammad Atta and some of the 9/11 hijackers were drinking and going to strip joints before they perpetrated their crime. Now, not that I frequent any of these establishments.
Of course not.
But since they were there, it means that, you know, a lot of Islamic terrorists like this scene, the strip joints or good beer. What is some good beer or these establishments in the Islamic world? Why was Muhammad Atta and them at these establishments?
Well, that's two separate questions. Muhammad Atta was there, I would expect, because he knew he was going to do the greatest deed of all in Islam. You know, people asked Muhammad, what's the greatest deed? What's a greater deed than jihad? And he said, I don't know of any. And so he knew that he was going to tip the balance in his personal scale between his good deeds and his bad deeds to the good side by taking out a large number of infidels and dying in the process. And so he knew that there was nothing bad he could do that could outweigh that, and so he had kind of a free pass in the days before.
They think they're exempt from punishment.
Well, he knew that he was going to do this great jihad, and so it would outweigh any evil deeds he did, and so he could do whatever he wanted for a little while.
Our first segment is over. Thank you for joining us for this first part. We have 3 parts, and join us tomorrow evening for our second edition of our interview with Robert Spencer.